it on. Okay, now I think we're ready to go. Technology, kind of interesting. Excellent, okay. We have, I think Sheila's coming in. Is that Sheila? Pardon? Okay. Okay, let's have prayer to start. Our Father in heaven, thank you for this day, for being with each one of us and helping us in enjoying this camp meeting, for the people that have been arriving today and yesterday, extra people, and it's exciting. We ask that you will help us today in the things that we're learning about ourselves and about sleep and rest. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. Okay, we're excited to see everybody. If you filled out forms and you don't have them, see some people are coming in, so Paul has these. But before I get going on we'll get to you in a moment here. We have another form that we're having extra for you to fill out. We don't need it back because the scoring is on the bottom, but Paul wants to just describe a little bit about it so you understand it.
This is the red form, so don't worry if you don't get that filled out before the end of today, because it is self-scoring. Jane's going to need binoculars to see this all. I see her looking out at that. So this is kind of a component thing that as you fill it out, you kind of have to go back through it to get your answers in these correct areas on the right-hand side at the bottom. So if you're totally confused with this all by the time you're done, just talk to me. It is pretty complicated, but it is very accurate. A bunch of these things I got from Dr. Fred Harding at the General Conference. Asked him stuff on sleep because that is a lot of what he's done. And he gave me so much, and I said, well, if I give you 2, we should be good to go. And so Donnelly will explain the one that you did yesterday, and those of you that have arrived, I will hand this out now.
Okay, so perfect. We have a person yawning. And the last meeting, I was trying to keep my eyes open. I'm like, whoa, what's happening here? I think it's partly to do with the weather. It's raining and it's relaxing. And so we're all like, oh man, if we could just lay down and have a little snooze. Well, this is maybe the time to do it. But listen first, and then maybe we'll snooze a little bit in between somewhere there. That's no problem. Okay, so what is your sleep quotient? So I have a text here, Proverbs 3:21 through 26 in the NIV. My son, do not let wisdom and understanding get out of your sight. Preserve sound judgment and discretion. They will be a life for you, an ornament to grace your neck. Then you will go on your way in safety, and your foot will not stumble. When you lie down, you will not be afraid. When you lie down, your sleep will be sweet. Have no fear of sudden disaster or of the ruin that overtakes the wicked, for the Lord will be at your side and will keep your foot from being snared. So look at the middle there. When you lie down, you will not be afraid. When you lie down, your sleep will be sweet. Sounds pretty cool, huh? Is it always like that? Oh my goodness, let me tell you a story. How do you like this hippie van? At least that's what we called it. So this is a van that we rented in Australia a few years ago New Zealand, when we did some traveling in New Zealand. And so we went with a company that I think this one too, Paul, if you switch that one down, that had cheaper vans, and they weren't necessarily new, and they painted them just wildly. Well, luckily, we ended up with this one and not some of them that we saw. This one was pretty cool because it had birds and flowers. It was tropical. Both sides were really interesting. We even had little kids come up to us on the street. We like your van. It wasn't ours per se. So we were enjoying our time. And in New Zealand, you can pretty much park your van wherever you want. on the side of the road, whatever, and sleep for the night. So we found this little roadside turnout type of thing. Nobody else was parked there. It wasn't very large, and there was a bunch of clump of trees right in the middle. So we went and parked by there and thought this will be fine. We closed the curtains. We went in our sleeping bags, and we're just falling asleep. And all of a sudden, this vehicle, we don't even know what kind of vehicle it was, it roared right up and just right beside the van. And I just kind of like froze. It's like, oh no, is this where life is going to end? I started becoming extremely afraid. And somebody jumped out of the car. You could hear people talking and yelling and doing things, and you could feel the van kind of getting pushed, and like, oh my goodness, what is happening here? And I said to Paul, don't move. So we just held very still to pretend that we weren't going to be bothered or something. I don't know what was in our heads. And so all of a sudden, well, I think both Paul and I, we were holding very still, but we both said a quick prayer in our heads. Okay? And suddenly, everybody jumped in their vehicle and they roared off. And we're like, phew. Well, then what happens? Your adrenaline has risen and you're like, you're just not ready to sleep. So we actually had a little worship. We prayed. We didn't open the little curtains. We didn't look outside. We didn't do anything. We just had a little worship. We prayed. And this is what happened, that text. We had peace and we fell asleep and we slept all night without any other fear. That is the only reason, is because God helped us, because there's, you're in a country that's not your own. You can be afraid in your own country, but for some reason it's another country, even if it's English, you're just not sure what's going to happen to you. So that was our story about really trusting in our sleep. Another text, in peace I will both lie down and sleep, for thou alone, O Lord, makest me dwell in safety. So there is something to really relying on God for our sleep also. Not a problem to think about it that way. So what is actually the medical definition of sleep? It's really hard. The body's rest cycle. Wow. Well, we knew that, right? Well, what does the dictionary say? The natural state of rest in which your eyes are closed, your body is not active, and your mind is not conscious. Well, we know that too. Of course we know that. But that's good to recognize and remember what it means to be asleep. Okay, what about, just sleeping as it is, wherever you are? So this is a group of students we took to Swaziland, or called Eswatini now. And this is in the Frankfurt airport, get from Calgary to Frankfurt, and then we had to change planes when we had a layover, of course. Everybody's so tired because, you're packing to the last minute and everybody's, excited, but then all of a sudden you crash. Well, then you can seem to sleep anywhere, right? You can sleep wherever. Suddenly your body says, enough is this, you better sleep. What about this guy sleeping? This was a group of students, he's not our student, it was a group of students we took to the Philippines, study tour. And at that time, there were guards that were assigned to the group, okay, to protect from the Maoist rebels, okay? So this guard actually stayed 24/7 in the hospital with one of our 6 students. 24/7, he always had his AK-47 gun with him. But he needed to sleep too. So he'd get the pillow, put it on the butt end of the gun, and sleep away, but he was always at the ready. I'll just throw in a quick story. One of the main guards, the guy that was over top of everybody, Paul talked to him one day and he said, so what lengths would you go to protect me? And the students and Paul had only been there for, about 3 weeks maybe? And they were going to be there 6 weeks. He said, I would die for you. Paul said, what? You die for me? I'm a Canadian. You're Filipino. You're not, I don't even live here. I'm not even related to you. He said, looked Paul right in the eye. I would die for you. This is my job. I would die for you. And Paul was just amazed, just amazed. And when the group left, Paul had given some of the people, was it Steps to Christ? No, what was it? Steps to Christ. And he'd given this fellow Steps to Christ. And he saw him reading it from time to time. And when they left, this general, if you want to call him that, of all these people that were protecting the students and the group that was there, he started crying that the group and Paul was leaving. What a difference a person can make by befriending people and just talking to them and recognizing that they, you mean so much to each other, regardless of where you're coming from. What about this fellow sleeping? This was a study tour to Nepal. Now, this sleep might be drug-induced, might be alcohol-induced. Maybe he's homeless and he feels safer if he's actually sleeping in an area where people frequent because he's afraid of what other people will do to him. But that's a sad way to sleep, wouldn't you say? Very sad way to sleep. But it happens. So you see, the body still needs rest, regardless of what harm we're doing to our body. What about in wilderness survival? Thinking about what we're having today with all this rain? A few weeks ago, Paul did a wilderness survival day. A group of people wanted him to do it. We had ages 6 to about 65, 66, somewhere in there. People that joined in with this. And so we said, we went through all the things that we were doing to prepare them for a variety of things. And then the part of the day came that they were supposed to build a shelter. Well, wouldn't you know it? It turned out just like here. It started raining. It was beautiful in the morning, sunny. And about the time it was time to build shelters, and we're like, okay, you guys, go build your shelters. They said, really? It's raining. We said, yep, you got to build your shelters. And they all rallied. Every single age said, you know what? If we were in a survival situation, we would have to do that. So let's do it. So everybody went out. We had them in groups. And so this group of 6 people, there were 3 kids and the adults. So this is how they started. And then they put the grass on top and different other branches. And here's the kids inside. If you can see it, you can hardly see the kids in there, sorry. But at least you can see that some of the people got it. They all decided to try to crowd in the shelter. They realized that this would help in the rain for an hour maybe, but they would get pretty cramped up. But if a couple people, 2 or 3 people needed to sleep in there on a survival type of thing, they could actually handle it. So they were so excited that they had completed the project. What about being alone and afraid? Is it easy to sleep then? Probably not, because suddenly we're afraid, we're alone, there's no one to talk to. How do we get past some of that? So I have permission from my sister-in-law to share this story. Her husband, Otto, unexpectedly passed away in March of this last year. So Otto is Paul's brother, okay? Paul is the youngest of his family, and Otto is 5 years older than him, the next brother. He passed away unexpectedly. Paul had even talked to him the night before he passed away, and he seemed to be recovering. Although he was still kind of weak from he had COVID actually, but seemed like he was rallying and doing okay. They talked on the phone for a while, and he passed away. So Sharon, his wife, We've kept up with them over the years a lot of times anyway, but we're especially making sure we call her regularly now, okay? Just to make sure, even though her children are nearby and family is nearby, it's just different when other people make the effort to call. So remember that, make the effort to make your phone calls. So she told us this story, and so she said I could use it. She said she's always been afraid of the dark. And now that Otto had passed away, she was really afraid. And now she was alone. Alone and afraid. No one to help her. Be not afraid of the dark. So she said, so what I've decided to do is every night since Otto passed away, she says, I pray every night before going to sleep. I pray that Jesus will give me peace so that I can sleep. And he's answered her prayer every night since her husband has passed away. What a blessing. What a blessing. We might feel alone and afraid, but Jesus is there to help us. Really, really important. So the text I wanted to put with that is, whoever dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty. You will not fear the terror of night, nor the arrow that flies by day, for he will command his angels concerning you to guard you in all your ways. You know, Paul and I memorized that way back when we first got married, and we usually use that in our evening devotions before we went to sleep. And actually, if I remember correctly, that's the verse we said to each other. We didn't have our Bibles open that night in New Zealand when we were so afraid. We actually said that memorized verse together.
It's also a lovely game on Eagles wing.
Yes, exactly. Very good. So sleep is a necessity of life. And I love this picture. Look, the peaceful look on the mother's face and the baby. So we would like to sleep like a baby, right? No fear, no concerns. You can just sleep. So sleep happens to be a billion-a-year industry. Not 1 billion, 23.7. And I bet, well, I don't bet, but I wonder, I wonder if since COVID, this has risen. The industry, the amount of money that's used for this. It's very possible. So why is it so much? Think about other things that have to do with sleep that's out in the world today. Okay, so we're looking at all kinds of pills, whether it's over the counter or prescription. Okay, you can get new kinds of pillows, you can get beds, you can get books, you can get everything, new sheets. If you have these sheets, you will certainly sleep better, right? A variety of so many things that people say are going to help you with your sleep. So you can understand, if we're having trouble sleeping, we're going to really make sure we try to get some of these things or do it. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the sleep cycle. So we'll get a little bit into an idea of what we need and what we don't need. So notice I have the word bad in the middle. So too much sleep is bad. If you go backwards, too little sleep is bad. So you have to look at both ends of the spectrum, okay? Too much sleep, too little sleep. One sleep cycle is 90 minutes. Okay, this is for everybody. So how many full sleep cycles did you get last night? So I want you to start getting your math skills out. If you don't have them like me, then pull out your phone or something that you can do some calculations if you need to. Otherwise, just do it in your head. How many sleep cycles? So do the math. Okay, number of hours slept times 60 minutes, divide by 90. That's beyond my imagination, but I need my calculator for that. Okay, number of hours you slept last night, multiplied by 60, divide by 90. Now, Eric and Candy just got in. Their sleep cycle is totally off, just like ours is still kind of off, coming from Alberta, right? Okay, so you're ending up with a weird sleep cycle at the moment. Okay, here's some ideas here, some examples. 5 hours times 60 is 300, divided by 90 is 3.3 sleep cycles. So if you had 5 last night, that's about the number of sleep cycles. 8 hours times 60 divided by 90 is 5.33 sleep cycles. So how many sleep cycles did you get? I heard somebody say 6. 4.5. 5.33. That was easy. You didn't even have to do it, right? Any others want to share? 4. Okay. And how many are we supposed to get? 5. Okay. So 5 is about 7 to 9 hours of sleep a night. Okay. So those of you that are working at camp, having a little bit extra sleep, little less sleep, during the night, that's understandable because there's lots you're trying to accomplish and do, right? And Pastor Ken, his sleep cycles are probably off like he lives in Germany or something, because he's picking up people at midnight and 3 o'clock in the morning and dropping people off, and so it makes it more difficult. So, but something to think about. Let's see how we can work through that. Okay, why shouldn't we sleep more? I thought I should go through the Bible and find some texts. So in Proverbs it says, "Do not love sleep, lest you come to poverty. Open your eyes and you will be satisfied with bread." In Proverbs again, "How long will you lie there, O slacker? When will you get up from your sleep?" That's the Berean Study Bible. Isn't that hilarious? How long will you lie there, O slacker? To me, it's like, oh, the days that I wanted to sleep in when I was a teenager. Man, no wonder my folks called me a slacker. "Lazy people sleep soundly, but the idleness leaves them hungry." Interesting. So even the Bible's saying, be careful how much you sleep, okay? So what about you? Canadians not getting enough sleep. So 1 in 4 adults aged 18 to 34 aren't getting enough sleep. 1 in 3 adults aged 35 to 64 aren't getting enough sleep. 1 in 4 adults aged, 65 to 79. So think of your age group. Are you one of those people in that age group that you feel you aren't getting enough sleep? Whoops, going too fast here. Okay, 1 out of every 2 adults have trouble going to sleep or staying asleep. Okay, so again, this is just something to think about, the statistics that are out there. Think about it in your situation yourself. Are you one of those or not? Okay, 1 in 5 adults don't find their sleep refreshing. So yeah, you don't have trouble falling asleep, but you don't wake up feeling like you're refreshed. Okay, so that becomes a problem also, right? 1 in 3 adults have difficulty staying awake during waking hours. Okay, well, I had that problem this morning already, okay? But this is like problems that are regular that we have to think about, okay? 33.3% of adults who get insufficient sleep report having chronic stress. Okay, I won't go through the other part because basically you want to figure out if that's you. 12.3% of adults who get insufficient sleep report having poor mental health. Almost 50% of Canadians claim spending more time in bed during the COVID-19 pandemic. Interesting. Which partly will show why people got heavier. Because if you sleep more, you're going to gain more weight. If you sleep more than you should, that is. Okay, and you're eating more because you're at home all the time now. So there's lots of reasons why so many people gained significant weight. Oh, and also the mental depression or the mental health aspect during COVID. All of this plays into it, right? So what about it then? Let's give you some ideas then for better sleep. First thing we need to think about is we need to be consistent. So did you know that if you could make yourself a schedule, or if you try to keep a schedule, if you can go to bed the same time every night and wake up the same time in the morning, you're more likely to continue to have good sleep all the time, okay? Now, we know that's not always possible, but we'll go through that, okay? If you don't have a consistent schedule at the moment, then you need to adjust by changing it by daily increments. So let's say you're wanting more sleep, and you say, I need to add an extra hour of sleep. I'm just not getting enough sleep. So you say, well, I go to sleep at 12 every night, but now I'll go to sleep at 11. Do you think you're going to fall asleep at 11? Absolutely not. Your body is not ready to sleep because you haven't given it that pattern yet, okay? So just go 5 minutes back, okay, the first night. Maybe do that for a week or so, maybe 2, depending on what you need. Then when you go back another 5 minutes. So eventually you'll get back to a whole hour extra and you haven't had to work for it. Your body slowly gets used to it. So by setting that sleep schedule, it helps. If you have an alarm clock or need an alarm clock, don't hit the snooze button, okay? So your alarm clock rings because you're trying to keep your schedule, okay? By the way, if you have a consistent schedule, you will not need an alarm clock because your body automatically knows that's the time that you're supposed to wake up, so you do, okay? But if you hit the snooze button, what happens is you fool your brain and it gets all messed up, and then finally it doesn't know when you're supposed to be sleeping at all. So don't use the snooze button if you're using an alarm clock. Okay, what about lost sleep? Like I was mentioning about Pastor Ken here and different people in here, Caitlin and her husband are the ones that picked us up, and we ended up not getting back here till 3 in the morning because everything was delayed. Okay, so we end up with lost sleep from time to time. What you should do if you have lost sleep is nap, but don't sleep in. Okay, so remember when you were a student and you did an all-nighter or you decided you needed to cram for that exam, so you crammed way late in the night, and so you decide that the next day you're going to sleep in. That's not the best way to do it. It would be better to, during that next day, right after your exam, sleep for 15 minutes, and then your body kind of readjusts itself, and then you're back kind of in the right time slot again for your body. So the other thing is, think about weekends. You know how we say, oh, we've been working hard all week, we get to sleep in on Sunday morning, and then we'll have brunch. Have you ever noticed that on Sunday afternoon you have a headache? That's probably why, because you slept in and you ate at a different time than you usually ate, and you ate more at that breakfast meal than you usually eat, okay? Which changes the blood sugars in your body and all the cycles that are happening normally, and you end up with a headache. So it's really, even during weekends, keep your sleep schedule the same. I know it's hard to do that with teenagers, but it is something to think. Okay, what about naps then? If we're going to nap, which I would nap when I had my babies and children at home still before they went to school. I loved to nap with them. And when they all went back to school, I was like, oh my goodness, now I don't have an excuse. But once I studied into this, I realized that actually naps are good, so don't quit napping. But there's a key to napping, okay? If you're going to nap, I went too far here. You should only nap like late in the morning or sometime in the morning or early afternoon. Probably not past 3 o'clock, maybe even past 2 o'clock, okay? And your nap should be not longer than 30 minutes. Because if you go more than 30 minutes, your body changes how you're sleeping and you're going into a full sleep cycle, and then when you wake up, you're like, you do not feel good, and then when it's time to go to bed, you can't fall asleep, okay? But a nap is just, I like what Pastor Ken calls it. He says to his wife, did you have your power nap today yet? Okay, and that is so important. If you're going to nap, keep it short, not longer than 30 minutes. When I want to nap now, I've trained myself so that I don't even need an alarm clock to wake up. I look at my clock when I lay down, and it's not always the same time of day, and I don't nap every day. I'll look at my clock and I'll say, okay, it's this time. I want to wake up in 15 minutes. That's about that time. And quite often I'll fall asleep very quickly, and all of a sudden I wake up and I was like, oh, look at that. That's when I wanted to wake up. Okay, so if you need a nap regularly, you can train yourself to actually, your body recognizes that you've had the 15 minutes, that's all you want. So it's kind of cool, actually, what you can train your brain and your body to do. Okay, after dinner drowsiness, this is, for me, this I call lunch dinner, and supper is the night meal, but this is considered, I took this from a source that's a US source, and after dinner is the night meal, okay? So a lot of times what people will do is they'll have a fairly heavy evening meal. And after you eat that, and now you're home from work, or you're not doing things of the day, and suddenly you sit down after you eat and you get drowsy. So you're sitting in your chair, you start reading, you fall asleep. By the time it's time to go to bed, you're wide awake, okay? So a problem. So what can you do about that? Get up and do something. Maybe you should go and do the dishes that you didn't do before. Actually, you know that this is interesting thing. I keep thinking of things as we go along here. Did you know that if you get up, instead of falling asleep after your supper meal, okay, and do the dishes, if you do your dishes by hand, you're actually doing what's considered a 3D activity, which helps limit the risk of Alzheimer's and dementia. So the more 3D activities you do, so these dishwashers aren't necessarily the best things for us, right? But isn't that interesting how we can combine so many things and it helps us in many different ways that we even thought about? Okay. So we should naturally regulate our sleep-wake cycle. So a big thing is increase the light exposure in the morning. Daylight, of course, does that. Now, in the wintertime in Canada, it makes it difficult because the daylight comes so much later than when we need to wake up. So either some people actually need to use one of those lights that, those blue lights that go into their eyes to help wake them up. But maybe there's other ways you can consider the light exposure, but increase the light exposure in the morning when you're supposed to be waking up. So some people need the light therapy. Sunshine really does help with wake-up time. Interesting, if you're taking a dog for a walk, make sure you do it in the morning before you go to work, okay? Because you're getting that sunlight in the morning, and don't wear sunglasses in the morning, because then you're getting light exposure coming right into your eyes, which actually wakes you up faster and better, okay? So take your dog, no sunglasses in the morning unless you're going at 10 o'clock where it's really beating. But if you go at an earlier time in the morning, you need light on your face actually to wake up. Did you know that? It's the face that you need the light to wake up. Open the blinds and curtains. Move your desk by the window if you're at work, okay? Then for your sleep cycle at night, you need to boost the melatonin. How can you do that? Okay, so 3 hours before bedtime, this is not 10 minutes, 3 hours before bedtime, turn off your electronic devices. What are your electronic devices? iPad, cell phone, TV, computer. Those are the four main ones that we would think about now. 3 hours before bedtime? Have you ever noticed that you have something you have to do, you work long, or you have all these emails, or you want to check this, or you're playing a game? It's like, oh my, I better go to bed. So you get ready for bed, you jump into bed, and you fall asleep, and then you wake up immediately about 5 minutes, and you can't sleep, and you can't sleep. That's why. Because you've been having those electronic things, the light going into your eyes from that electronic device changes how you sleep, okay? You might sleep all night, but your sleep will not be as good. So try it. 3 hours though, you guys. You gotta try the 3 hours. And at night, avoid the bright lights, okay? Use low wattage bulbs. So let's say in your living room you have those bulbs that have the 3 settings, or you have one of those things on the wall that you can make the lights brighter or not, okay? You can dim the lights, the dimmers, okay? So as the evening progresses on, keep dimming the lights. And your body is looking at the fact that, oh, it's getting darker. It's now time to go to sleep. I better get my body ready for this, okay? Cover electrical displays. So in your bedroom, do you have a bedside clock that is fairly bright? Did you know now you can get clocks like that you can have different settings of brightness of that display? So put it on the low display. Or I'll tell you a story about a student I had in one of my classes. So I'm doing this whole lecture, and he comes back to me a few weeks later, and he said, he says, this is very interesting. He said, I was getting so sleep deprived, and I was having significantly problems. My mom took me to the doctor. Finally, they took me to the sleep doctor, and we tried all kinds of things, the sleeping pills, the this, the that, everything under the sun. He said, nothing helped me. I still was having sleep problems, and they could not figure out what my problem was. He said, I listened to your lecture, and I heard about the display on my clock beside the bed, and he said, wonder if that has anything to do with it. He moved that out of the room, and 2 weeks later, he was sleeping like a baby. All it had to do, he spent all that money, he went through all that ridiculous stuff, and all it had to do was with the light. So think about some of the little things that become extremely simple to change rather than going through some of the other things. Okay, a dark room, some people actually use night masks, or those eye masks rather. I find that a little, doesn't work for me, but it might work for you if you're having troubles. The other thing is, if you need to get up to go to the bathroom at night, make sure there's night lights, got to change it around. Night lights along the hallway and in the bathroom, because as soon as you turn on a light to go to the bathroom, there's light and you wake up more. Okay, so keep the night lights, and it's a low wattage, and so when you get back to the bedroom, oftentimes you'll be able to go right back to sleep. Okay, what about a relaxing bedtime routine? So if we are stopping the electronics 3 hours before we go to bed, that makes it very easy to make a nice nighttime routine. We can relax and unwind. How about studying our Bible? Wouldn't that be a good time? And unless you do it in the morning, because a lot of people like that morning shot for the day, okay? But maybe you also study at night, read your Bible. Maybe decide, oh, this is the year I'll read my Bible through this year, okay? So take your 10 or 15 minutes and read and have a prayer for yourself. Other things you can do, don't put the videos on, don't do that, okay? Make your bedroom more sleep-friendly. So I'm sure you've heard of this, but you should not have a TV in your bedroom. Because what happens is your brain associates your bedroom with an entertainment center rather than a sleeping center, okay? So move the TVs out of your bedroom. Think about the noise. Do you have noisy neighbors? Well, that's really hard to it's hard to deal with noisy neighbors, but maybe there's ways you can decrease the noise by putting a different blind on the window if it's outside noise. There's room darkening blinds, but they also muffle the sounds more, okay? Or maybe you're one that needs the earplugs at night to sleep. Our daughter-in-law uses that, and our son decided to try it. And he said, I can't do that because he said, I can't, I need to know what's happening around me. I need to know if the kids are crying. I need to know whatever. But it might be something you could use. Cool bedroom temperature. Did you know that you'll sleep better if your bedroom's cooler? Now, we've had some difficulty here at camp, not last night, but it's been so hot, right? Okay, so you try to get some air movement, but you don't sleep quite as well. But in your own house, you probably have fans or a variety of things to help keep your bedroom cool. So we live in Alberta. Even when it's 40 below, we have our window cracked open a bit every night to get that fresh air in and keep our bedroom cool. Turn the heat down. In fact, it automatically goes down for night. I think our bodies know it's time to sleep because the house is getting colder and colder, and so you want to jump under those covers. Okay, so the best temperature is, oh, I went too fast. I'm just going to go back here. The best temperature is around 18 degrees Celsius. Okay, so that's a nice temperature to sleep in. Your body will like that. If you need an extra blanket, that makes a difference, okay? And I want to talk about attitudes and beliefs. If you think you're going to have a bad sleep, you will. Because did you know that you are your self-prophecy? If you prophesy that you're going to have a bad sleep that night, you will. If you decide that, okay, I'm going to have a good sleep tonight, regardless, and pray about it, oftentimes you'll have a better sleep than you thought you were going to have, okay? So attitudes and beliefs really do make a difference of how we sleep. Okay, we need a comfortable bed, okay? If your bed should have enough room that you can move around in easily, okay, and that you can turn in it. So if you're sleeping on the couch, that's probably not going to give you a very good sleep because you can't turn very well. So the more you can move in your bed and be able to move easily, the better sleep you'll have because your muscles don't get so stiff and sore, okay? So one of the beds, the Tempur-Pedic beds where you sink in, okay, or even the Posturepedic ones, what happens is you sink in and you feel so good, but you stay that position all night. This is really hard even for older people because you don't move and you wake up stiff and sore and you're wondering, man, am I really getting arthritis that bad? Where it may have only to do with the bed, okay? Okay, so a comfortable bed is important. If you're waking up with a sore back or neck, maybe it's new time for a mattress. You know, they say that you should be changing your mattresses every 10 to 15 years, depending on how expensive it is. If it's not an expensive bed, you're likely to have it change it in 6 to 8 years. Okay, so think about maybe it's your bed that's causing you problems. Maybe you just need a different pillow. Okay, you want to wind down, have a favorite hobby, have a warm bath. There's so many things you can do to be able to have a relaxing bedtime routine. Don't go out and jog or run around the block or walk, do your exercise at night, because that heightens your body so that it wants to be awake. Okay, so do your gentle stretches or just a small walk around the block or something like that, but not something that's not your exercise time. Okay. Wouldn't you know it? You know, we talk about the New Start or Creation acronym that they use for, you know, our better health. Wouldn't you know it? Eating right makes a difference with sleep also. It's really exciting to me that all of these things tie together in New Start, tie together, all these principles for our body tie together so easily that it should be just become natural because you do them all at the same time. Okay, so if you're eating right, you're going to sleep better. So what are we thinking about with that? A bigger breakfast, then that should be the biggest meal of the day, and very little for supper. Okay, if you have heavy, rich foods at supper, it's very difficult to sleep. Fatty foods takes a lot of work for your stomach to digest. So if your stomach is working hard on digesting, you're not going to sleep very well, okay? Spicy, acidic foods, you can have stomach trouble and heartburn at night, and so then you don't sleep very well. So eat those things, you know, in the middle of the day so that your body can release what it needs to, okay? Avoid too many liquids in the evening. My age, for sure, I have to think about that, okay? Because the more often you go to the bathroom, the more often you wake up. It disrupts your sleep cycle. Caffeine, some people say, I can drink caffeine any time of day and I can still sleep. That may be true, because people that are coffee drinkers or tea use a lot of caffeine during the day, their body is used to that. Okay, so they need more and more to get the effect they want when it has to do with caffeine. They may actually be able to drink 2 cups of coffee, 3 cups of coffee and fall fast asleep at night, no problem, they think. But what they don't realize is actually changes the pattern of how you sleep. Okay, so if someone gave me some caffeine at night, I would not sleep at all. But people whose bodies are used to, they think they're just fine because they can fall asleep. So this is something you can help your friends too. If they say, man, I'm just not sleeping well, or I'm sleeping but I don't feel rested in the morning, maybe that's all they have to do is change when they have the caffeine. Caffeine is also a diuretic, meaning that you're going to go to the bathroom more times in the night. Sugar, oh, we have to bring in sugar again, amazing. Sugar messes up with our sleep actually in such a way that our sleeplessness leaves us with a craving for more sugar. Isn't that crazy? Okay, so if we're, like a lot of candy or like a lot of sugary foods, think about it giving your kids this. Okay, so your kids are getting a lot of cookies and candies and whatnot. They're going to crave more. They're not going to sleep well, plus they're going to crave more for the next day. A 2016 study found that people who have diets high in sugar tend to sleep less deeply and display greater restlessness at night. So if think about, maybe that's something you want to change. Okay, drugs. We talked a little bit about caffeine already. It can cause sleep problems up to 10 hours after you've had your last dose of caffeine. Don't you like how I put it, last dose? Sorry, I just had to bring it in that way. Interesting, we spent one summer visiting about 4 5 or 6, I think, addiction recovery centers across the United States to help us in our teaching at Berman University in the adventure-based counseling program, because we were training students to go out and work with people possibly with addiction problems and working in centers like this. So we wanted to understand it a little better ourselves. Interesting, we visited, half of them were Adventists and half of them were not Adventists. And some of them were so highfalutin that it was movie stars and people with tons of money that went there, and it cost amazing amount of money to go to these centers. But every single one, whether it was an Adventist center or a public center, the rule was that all the coffee machines, tea machines, Coke machines, everything that's around there were either locked or taken away by 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Isn't that interesting? Just the caffeine they were getting rid of so that people would have less cravings for the drugs that they were trying to work on. So it actually is something we have to think more about. Alcohol reduces the sleep quality. Even though a person falls asleep with alcohol, it actually reduces the sleep quality. Sometimes they say, well, you should have a nightcap, that the doctor might even recommend that if you're having trouble sleeping. Don't even consider that, because yes, it'll make you fall asleep, but the sleep quality is horrible, okay? Quitting smoking, nicotine is a stimulant. So if you're smoking right before you go to bed or sometime in the afternoon that carries on till the nighttime, it ends up stimulating your body and you have trouble falling asleep, plus you have less quality of sleep. What about herbal remedies? That should be good, right? They're herbs. No, actually, you have to consider this, okay? Some actually induce sleepiness, but I looked up what the FDA says about these things, okay? It regulates dietary supplements, treats them like foods, does not regulate, treats them like food rather than medications. So drug manufacturers, the manufacturers have to show their products are safe and effective before selling them, and they have to label them. So some are not safe at all. Some you buy and they say it has all these products in it that are supposed to help you sleep or whatever it is you're buying it for. And the tests that they've done on some of these products, it doesn't even have in there what they say it does, because it's not regulated and they don't have to prove anything. Okay, so really be careful, because even the doctor doesn't know what's in these things. Okay. Sleep aid medications, this is something we need to really be careful on too, okay? Because we're looking at the idea that most of these sleep medications that a doctor will prescribe to you are addictive, okay? Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't ever have to use them, because there are some people that are so sleep deprived with their sleep disorder that they need something to get their body back to a center where back to a position where they can actually work on how to fall asleep properly. So think about that kind of sleep aid as being a short-term idea. Don't let anybody persuade you that this is something that you're going to need for life, because that's going to be dangerous for you, okay? So be careful on the sleep aid medications. Amazing, we have to bring exercise into this again. Look at that. Exercise, brisk exercise helps you sleep better. Have you ever noticed if you had a long hike or you chopped wood all day, or you did something of hard labor, how well you slept that night? Well, look at that. Isn't that amazing? Okay, so I like, back to the exercise, I heard this quote, and I'm sorry, I don't exactly know who said it, but I heard it on the mental health summit that the North American Division had a few months ago. I joined up to do that, and that was really good. Those of you pay attention to what's happening on the North American Division site. They have so much stuff that we don't have to reinvent, okay? But the one I was in one day, the doctor said, everything that gets worse as we age gets better with exercise. Everything that gets worse as we age, I'm aging, we're all aging, okay, gets better with exercise. Everything. The arthritis, the mental health, the dementia, the Alzheimer's, the sleep, everything. So exercise, if anything, at least exercise, okay? You will sleep more deeply if you exercise. Minimum is 20 to 30 minutes a day, and you can break that up as you go along. Relaxing exercises at night, make sure they're just kind of stretching exercises or just a stroll for a few minutes, okay? So I'd kind of mentioned that before. We have to think about anxiety and stress because we know if we're anxious for something, okay? So if I have a test I have to take that next day or if I have a presentation, I might not sleep as well because I'm a little bit stressed about getting up and doing that kind of stuff, okay? So what we're looking at, sleep helps reduce the waste buildup in the brain, and it's very, very important to have sleep for our brain health. The aging brain and dementia. So all of that makes a big difference. Okay, so it reduces waste buildup. Okay, relaxation is important to help keep anxiety and stress in check. So if we're off our cell phones and all these things that are bombarding us, the ads on TV, everything, for 3 hours before we go to bed, we're doing gentle exercises, we're starting to relax, you can understand why we're going to sleep better, okay? Some stress management techniques, there's breathing exercises, there are progressive relaxation exercises, you can read the Bible, meditation and prayer. In my stress management class at Berman University, I would do this progressive muscle relaxation technique for the students. So at the beginning of the semester, I would talk about that somewhere in the semester, we'll have a day in class where you can sleep. And so I'd be lecturing, you know, the next week students would come, when are we going to be able to sleep in class, Mrs. Lehman? When are we going to be? I said, it's coming, it's coming. So the day before I would do this lecture, or this, sorry, not lecture, but this technique, I would tell students they could bring pillows, they can bring, I had some pads there, they could lay on the floor, they could bring a sleeping bag, they could bring whatever, you know, a blanket. And students would come well prepared. Some brought sleeping bags, big comforters, nice pillows. They came prepared because they were going to be allowed to sleep that day in class. And then I would do the progressive muscle relaxation. And I would read it, we'd dim the lights and I would read it. And it was so interesting because I said, my goal is try to stay awake for a little while so you get to understand how the technique works. But if you fall asleep, don't worry about it. It's no problem, okay? And in my head, I didn't tell the students, my goal was to try to get every student to fall asleep for that 15 minutes that they could sleep. It was hilarious. People were snoring and, you know. So it's just kind of fun to be able to know that there's things to do. Let's try a breathing recipe. Yeah, it's a recipe, all right. A breathing technique that could help you at night. It's easy. It's something you can use to help fall asleep, but it's something you can do to help if it's something you're doing that's stressful. You could just be standing in the grocery store in line and you're just feeling a little anxious. It might help you then. So let's try it. I'll describe it. It's very quick. It's 3 seconds, 3 times, okay? So I will tell it to you and then we'll do it. I'll count it and then we'll do it together. So it's 3 seconds, a deep breath in, 3 seconds, hold it, 3 seconds, let it out, okay? So I can't count when you're doing it. So you do it and I'll count, okay? So everybody, deep breath. 1, 2, 3, hold it. 1, 2, 3, let it all out. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so you get the idea. We'll try it again. You want as big a breath as possible in your first 3 seconds. Hold it totally for the 3 seconds and let as much out, even if you bend over or whatever. So let's try it again. Breathe in. 1, 2, 3. More. Hold it. 1, 2, 3. Let it out. 1, 2, 3. Out. Now just breathe normally. Now don't fall asleep. I still have a few things to do yet. What if you wake up? I mean, this happens to us normally. We're not going to have perfect sleeps all the time. This is normal, okay? So what's the first thing? Way to get back to sleep? Stay out of your head. What does that mean? Don't worry that you woke up and you can't fall asleep. It happens once in a while. Don't worry about it. Don't stress over it, okay? If you're having trouble, maybe do another relaxation technique. Make relaxation your goal, not trying to fall asleep your goal. And then you'll probably fall asleep, because if you're making sleep your goal, then you keep, oh, I'm not sleeping yet. Oh, I'm not sleeping yet. Okay? So just make it, well, I'll just lay in bed and relax, and all of a sudden you wake up in the morning, oh, I did fall back asleep. Okay? Maybe you need to get up and read, not on the iPad. No screen time. Don't look at a movie. Maybe you just need to read, and that's enough. Or turn on a sermon and you'll fall asleep. No. You know, do something that is not screen time, but something that just kind of lulls you to sleep, right? Okay, another thing is do a quiet, stimulating, non-stimulating activity, maybe puzzle, something like that. Postpone worrying and brainstorming. How can you help with that? Okay, so there's a project I want to do. All of a sudden I wake up and I have this brilliant idea, so I don't want to fall asleep because I'm going to forget it for sure. So keep a paper and pencil by your bed and write it down, and you wake up in the morning, yeah, that was a good idea. Or you wake up, it's like, man, that's a weird idea. Why did I think of that? But at least you remember it, right? Because you had it written down, okay? So think about having your paper and pencil. Then you don't have to. Keep a worry journal. Some people have a lot of stress and anxiety in their lives, so maybe just put down when you wake up, what are you worrying about? Then maybe you can work on that more specifically the next days, okay? Maybe you have an estranged relationship with a child, and that's what's worrying you, okay? Well, write that down, and it's like, okay, that's what's keeping me awake. What can I do about that problem? Okay, I can get some counseling, I can read the Bible, I can relax more, I can reach out to that person from time to time so that they know I love them, I'm not judging them for something. So that's just an example, okay? So there's many things. So if you write these things down, it reminds you the next day that maybe I should do something about this, and maybe the Holy Spirit has put that thought in your head to be able to do something about it, okay? And don't lie awake for long periods of time. Do these other things to help yourself fall back asleep. Anybody do shift work or have done shift work here in the past? That is so difficult for a wake sleep cycle, isn't it? So maybe your schedule was that same time all the time. So that helps because you can actually set your sleep cycle to that. But what if your schedule was some nurses there, you know, from 11 to whatever, and then the next week they're 2 to 6 or whatever I'm sorry, it's not the right things, but, you know, you understand that sometimes it just keeps getting mixed up. That really becomes difficult, so you have to take more care in making sure that your sleep cycle is the best it possibly can be. Okay, I have a cousin who works a 2 to 11 shift, but it's the same time all the time. And so she makes sure that she goes to bed at 12 o'clock every night, whether she's at work or not. Because she works, I think, 3 or 4 days a week. I think she works 4 days on, 3 days off, 4 days on, 3 days off, something like that. Okay, so she's able to do that. I mean, her children have left home. She's single now. And so, you know, she's able to do. What if you have a family that you have to take care of? Okay, so you have to work out with your children, your spouse, whoever happens to be in your household, to work out how is it going to work for your sleep cycle, okay? Avoid a long commute. So I know it's not always easy, but if you have to drive a long ways on a shift work, it's harder to sleep because you drive to work, it wakes you up. When you drive back that long way, it wakes you up. And you should be going to sleep when you get home, but now you're wide awake. You know, you're sleepy when you left home and you drove that hour to go back home, and you're wide awake, and you're like, man, why am I wide awake now? Okay, so if you can possibly have your work and your house closer together, that would help. Okay, if you spend more time in daylight, that will help. Okay. take frequent breaks, adjust your cycle, like I said, avoid caffeine. If you can avoid caffeine altogether, that will help you to sleep better on a shift schedule. Eliminate noise and light from the bedroom at night. So that means you need the room darkening blinds. You need to be in a bedroom in the house that has less traffic noise or kids playing in the backyard noise. So the more you can do that for your daytime sleep that you have to have, that'll help you out significantly. Know when to see a sleep doctor. Okay, so looking at, this is kind of regarding some of the stuff you've read in your forms again too, the things that you filled out. These are some of the symptoms you need to think about when it might be time to see a sleep doctor. Persistent daytime sleepiness or fatigue. Loud snoring with pauses and breathing. Now remember, you have to think about this. It's persistent daytime sleepiness. So if you're sleepy in the day from time to time, that's going to be normal. But if this is like every single day, this is a problem. Loud snoring, pauses in breathing. Maybe you have loud snoring, but maybe you don't have pauses in breathing. Okay, the pauses in breathing you have to think about carefully, which, like one lady mentioned, and I agree, how do you know you're snoring? You're sleeping or you're trying to sleep. It's the people around you that would know you're snoring. Okay, I have a sister-in-law that snored so loudly when she slept that you could hear her through the whole house. Like it almost felt like the house was moving and rumbling, okay? So difficulty falling asleep or staying asleep. Unrefreshing sleep. So remember, this is regular, this is on a consistent basis. This isn't like every once in a while you don't feel rested in the morning. Frequent morning headaches. Remember, frequent, not every once in a while. Crawling sensations. Sometimes people that need to see a sleep doctor, they have a feeling of stuff crawling on their skin. There's just kind of a weird sensation on their skin. Inability to move. So maybe you wake up and you cannot move your arm. And you have to actually move it with your other arm to get moving. And once you get up and get moving, then it becomes okay. Physically acting out in your dreams. Now, this can happen from time to time regardless, but if this is a regular thing, maybe think about it. Falling asleep at inappropriate times, like when you're driving. Or what I should say more is sometimes you'll stop, if some people stop at a stop sign or a stoplight and they briefly fall asleep, that's a problem, okay? Because they've stopped enough, their brain has turned off and they fall asleep and, oh, no, I need, somebody honks the horn, oh, I better get driving, okay? So this is something to think about. I can tell you a little bit about my story. I was so tired, and I'm trying to teach, I'm trying to do field trips, I'm trying to do all the extra things I'm doing on campus, and I was so tired, and I was thinking, man, I must be overworked. And then I was noticing that I was so tired that when I went to bed, I would fall asleep almost before my head hit the pillow. 5 minutes, I'm wide awake, and I cannot sleep for hours and hours. And I just didn't know what was happening to me. I couldn't figure it out. And Paul said when I was sleeping, sometimes I was snoring, and so, he was telling me these things. I was talking with my dad and telling him this problem I was having with staying asleep, like falling asleep. It was fine, but staying asleep, he said, you should go and get checked. Maybe you need a sleep machine. I said, I don't know. I don't look like the classic person. I'm not overweight. I don't think I'm that stressed. I don't know. There were all these excuses I had. Like, what in the world? And I didn't realize, your own person, you get used to what's happening in your body and with you. I did not realize I was getting extremely depressed. I didn't I didn't think that. I didn't think I was depressed, but I was getting extremely depressed. So finally, I followed my dad's advice. I went to the doctor, and she sent me on to Red Deer to go get tested and whatnot. So my dad told me, he said, if they tell you you don't need one, ask if you can at least try it. Because he had one and he was right on the borderline, and it helped him significantly. So he said, make sure you just kind of push it a little bit. So I went, had the test done. Nice, the test is something you take home, and so you don't have to sleep in a room that you don't know and you're cold and uncomfortable. So had the test done, and came back for the results. It was like, didn't have all the classic things. Well, I wonder what's keeping you awake. Is there something else that's keeping you awake? I said, I don't know. I'm stressed because I can't sleep. I'm depressed because I can't sleep. I don't know if there's anything else. So finally, it sounded like they didn't think I needed the machine. I said, well, could I at least try it? Oh, yes, no problem at all. So I tried it. That first night, I slept 8 hours. I didn't even have to go to the bathroom. 8 hours straight. I went back to them after the week I was allowed to have it and said, this is what's happening with my sleep now, which of course they can look on the machine and find out. And I said, oh, obviously you needed it. It's like, duh, yes. And amazing what a difference it has made for me, even though I don't have the classic symptoms and I'm just on the borderline where they don't think I need it, okay? Amazing, amazing difference. So this is what one of the machines looks like. CPAP means continuous positive airway pressure. It sends not oxygen, just air. It keeps the air pressurized. So in my case, it keeps my throat open and my airways open so I can breathe. It doesn't close off every breath I take, okay? So it just keeps it open, you don't even know it's doing that, and it helps you sleep significantly. So the American Heart Association says a good night's sleep is critical for a healthy lifestyle. There it comes again. It's in our lifestyle. Okay. Sleep deprivation can be a problem. It's a risk for dementia, hypertension, type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease. Dementia is at the top, did you notice? So if you are not sleeping well, better get into a good sleep pattern before it's too late. And so this will help keeping dementia away for a longer period of time. Good sleep helps boost immunity. You don't get sick as much. It keeps your body in check, decreases your blood pressure at night. Sleep, this is our daughter. Kids do better at sleeping than we do. If they're tired and sleepy, they go to sleep. Simple as that. So peace I leave with you. Peace I leave with you. Peace I give to you. I do not give you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not be afraid. So there's some other texts there too that really make a difference. So I want to do a very quick review, then we have a couple of forms to give you. Keep it simple. We've been talking a lot about this all week, and it sounds like there's so much I have to do. I don't even know if I can handle this. Keep it simple. Simple makes it way more fun, way more interesting. Only change one thing at a time and make it a really small change. So let's go over the New Start. Let's make New Start simple. Nutrition, eat food, not too much, mostly plants. Pretty simple. Exercise, walk more, stretch a little bit, strengthen a little bit. Water, try to get 8 glasses of water a day. See, this isn't very hard. Sunshine, let the sun shine on your face. Remember, we talked about how important it is to wake up in the morning. Temperance, just practice moderation and self-control in everything you do. That's just keep it as part of your lifestyle. Air, if we can get the outside air in God's nature, it's better. We might not be able to, but at least try to do that once in a while. Rest, perfect number, 7 to 9 hours. Trust in God, pray, read your Bible, and listen to Him every day. So what do you think? It's not as hard as we think, is it? Okay, so here's the homework. We have the stress profile. If you have not filled it out, I think most of you have here, but if you're going to be here tomorrow, pick up one of these and fill it out and give it to us before you leave. And then there's a burnout questionnaire. So we'll be talking about burnout and that kind of stuff tomorrow. I see Fred back there is nodding his head like he maybe should take this test. No. So thank you for being here today, and we'll quickly get these forms out for you, and make sure you give them back, because we need to either enter it in the computer and spit out the stuff, or look at it and grade it for you and then give it back tomorrow.